Let's dive right in. The FCC last week introduced their NPRM. That's a notice of proposed rule making that is going to potentially send shockwaves throughout the lead generation and performance marketing and digital advertising world. Just kind of getting to brass tacks, a think tank, kind of a left-leaning consumer company or group called Public Knowledge. The same Public Knowledge where Gigi Sohn was the founder. We're going to talk about her in a second. Submitted a comment to the commission back in December and said, you know what, commission, the lead generation world is so full of fraud, it's so full of abuses, it cannot be saved, and you should destroy it by saying that consent cannot be sold. A consent must be given directly to a provider of a good or a service. So if you are interested in a mortgage, you cannot go to lendingtree.com. You cannot go to an intermediary brokerage company where you might get comparison shopping. You have to go directly to the lender, Wells Fargo, Mutual of Omaha, Loan Depot, and provide that information directly on their website with no intermediaries. That, of course, would be a disaster for many, many segments of the economy. The entire, not the direct consumer marketers, they would have a whole huge challenge. They would lose a bunch of revenue, but they're not necessarily going to go out of business. The ones that would are the lead generators, the folks that are publishers that operate these websites, and the folks that are middlemen that provide a brokerage service connecting the publishers with the lead buyers, the offers of the goods and services that the consumers need and want. So we're talking about hundreds of thousands of people who are at risk of losing their jobs right now, depending on the outcome of that FCC NPRM. The good news is that the NPRM seems to suggest that the FCC understands that there's value to comparison shopping. There's value that these lead generators and the digital marketers do provide in terms of the engagement and the information and the competition that they enable between goods and service providers that help to keep everybody's cost of goods and credit low. So they get it. They get it kind of, at a high level. But what is also clear from the FCC record, and it's just frankly clear from everything we know about the lead generation world, is that lead generators have not self-policed sufficiently to date. They simply have failed to do what is necessary to avoid abuses to consumers. We're talking about a fraud rate between 25 and 40%. I mean, 25 to 40% fraud in the lead generation space. That's just unacceptable, right? It wasn't going to be long before the regulators stepped in to do something about that. And then even where it is a legitimate lead, a lead might get sold 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 100 times. There's no limits. There's no regulation that says how many times a lead can be sold or when or under what circumstances or to whom or for how long, right? There's no standards. There's no rules. And even when you talk about, the sufficiency of a lead form in the first instance, there are no standards in terms of how big the disclosure has to be, how it needs to be presented, how prominent it must be. Even the language it has to include is somewhat disputed right now. There is absolutely no standards, nothing clear that somebody operating in this industry can point to say, this is the law that I must follow. And so perhaps, these children who have been left unattended for so long will be forgiven for having both gotten into the cookie jar and turned on the microwave and spilled the water on the floor because they've taken liberties at every turn. And that's just reality. It's just reality. They've made the disclosures small and they put it below the button and they've created flows that kind of trick consumers into providing the consent in the first instance. That's not everybody. I'm talking about extreme cases here, but we see this. This happens, right? People that get these consents and the journalia looks valid because the language is all there, but you go through the flow and it's a multi-vertical website and they're there to look at a mortgage and now they're getting sold solar products, right? You see that sort of thing. Even if it's a perfectly legitimate lead, though, you see that lead get sold to 5 different aggregators who themselves will sell it 5 different times to different brokers who themselves will sell it to 5 different, maybe direct lead generators at that point who sell directly to a good or service provider. And these leads, they just get bounced around in the ether for 180 days. Many people mercifully will stop calling after 90 days, but that's not even necessarily baked. That's not even an industry standard in the true sense of the word. So the bottom line is the abuses out there in this industry are real, even if these companies, most of them are actually abiding by the letter of the law because the law has been so lapsed, just so lacking in this industry, that the standards that it needs had to come out beyond the law. And so it's somewhat ironic now that the FCC, the regulators, are coming down and saying, well, we're going to put you out of business because you didn't, behave yourselves, even though there was never any law, there's no regulation, there's no standards that have been put on this industry to have them self-regulate, or not self-regulate, to have them guide themselves in accordance with reasoned principles. And so again, like kids left alone to cause a mess in a kitchen when the parents are away, they've caused a mess. And so now the regulators are coming in and potentially saying, well, we're going to put the kids up for adoption and get rid of them. And I'm like, that's not the right option. They need a stern talking to. They need to be told, don't go into the drawers and don't eat cookies when we're not around. But look, something really big is going to come out of this NPRM. Non-action, I don't think, is an option. Although, as Queenie's about to tell us, there's been a change over at the commission, which might slow things down. But there's a ton of momentum around this, right? The commission now understands with the lead generation industry that they've got a huge hand, in my opinion, a huge hand in the spamming of America that we've all been living through for the last few years. I certainly support clamping down on a large number of practices, and of course, in creating REACH and putting down the standards that REACH has proposed, which assures that consumers provide real, valid, transparent consent. They know exactly what's going to happen, like a Surgeon General warning on the cigarette package. They know exactly what's going to happen when they push that button. They know how many companies are going to call them. They're going to get a rough estimate as to how many calls there are going to be placed. They're going to know how long they're going to receive calls for. And you know what? If they don't want to receive calls, they can go to a different website and do something differently and govern themselves accordingly. But empowering consumers to understand and know that they're going to be receiving calls, right? That's the objective of REACH. I envision a world where every single call that's made from a business to a consumer is an expected call. That consumer knows that call is going to be made and hopefully wants that call to be made, right? Is looking forward to it, so that we can stop the carrier blocking, which is unconstitutional. We can stop the labeling, which is probably defamation and also probably illegal. We can stop all of these kind of hideous things that we're allowing right now because we have to, because the robocall epidemic is so bad that we're willing to bend every law, we're willing to ignore the Constitution, we're willing to do everything that we have to do to stop robocalls, except what we should be doing, which is getting to the source and doing reasonable things in the industry that is, in my opinion, causing most of the problem. And again, the answer is not to kill the industry. It's not to put hundreds of thousands of people out of work in bulk. It's not to just, the unintended consequences of destroying the entire digital marketing architecture in this country. God knows where that leads. So that's not the answer. But letting things continue to be out of control the way they are now, that's not the answer either. So there's got to be something in between. And like I said, I'm thinking the REACH standards are the in-between. But I don't know. I don't usually do this. But do you guys have any thoughts on this? I mean, this is a huge, huge deal. I don't think that people should just hear it from me. Pooja, Tori, PJ, what do you guys think?
Well, one thing I do agree with is there needs to be some change, right? It's either you guys are going to die with the FCC NPR ruling, or you're going to have to get together and accept some set of standards, whether that's the REACH standards, whether it's a step above the REACH standards, or even a little bit below. Either way, the FCC, in my opinion, is not going to take away their thoughts and take away, stop discussing this matter. They've been discussing this for, 2-3 years now? The FCC has been attacking the lead gen industry.
Actually, that's not true. That's the irony, is that the FCC really hadn't done much with the lead generation industry.
But they've been complaining about telemarketers and spam calls and robocalls.
And that's what's so interesting is that I feel like the commission and others have finally kind of opened the door and seen, right?
Where is it coming from?
Exactly. And man, it's a no mercy mentality right now.
They've been investigating, trying to figure out what is the root cause of this. And now bingo, right? It's a lead gen industry, right? So, I mean, you already ate the cookie, right? Now, how do you get your kid to go work out, right? So it's one of those situations. And so I think the lead gen industry, there's no more, hey, I'm going to file for bankruptcy and start a new company, or I'm, going to go work with a different buyer. There's no pivoting around not being compliant anymore.
Yeah, this is remarkable. Tori, you got anything on this? PJ, what are you guys thinking?
I just think it's important to reiterate of how many people are actually going to be affected by this, Thousands of people are going to, 100,000 people possibly may even lose their jobs over over this without even considering, a reasonable alternative.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a massive deal, and it's funny because when I put up, I did a blog the day the NPRM came out. I was critical of the idea of shutting down the industry. I'm going to tell you, that blog hit got over 20,000 views. It was really, really well viewed, and I got a ton of comments. I'm going to tell you, these comments were not very nice. I mean, they were not very nice. They were like, "Die in the fire, Czar. You're terrible." And people really are animated and want robocalls to stop, and they view anybody that they view as even potentially, supporting those things as just being a terrible, vile person, which I don't think I am. But at the end of the day, the climate out there is crazy, and now I feel like Atticus and To Kill a Mockingbird, like trying to prevent a lynching. Like the folks are out there with the forks and with the pitchforks and the torches, and man, they're going to come to town and just burn the lead generation industry down, unless we give them a good reason not to. And again, Reach is out there doing everything it can to try to protect the industry, at least the good players in the industry. I was telling the other day, it kind of reminds me of that biblical story of Sodom and Gomorrah, where Lot was told, "Hey, look, go find 100 people that are righteous in this town, and I'll spare the town." And then he came back and was like, "Well, how about 50?" Okay. He came back and said, "Okay, well, how about 25?" Okay. And at the end of the day, it came down to if you can find one virtuous player in this, in this industry or in this city, I won't destroy it. So hopefully we can show the commission that there are good people here. Don't destroy the entire city, at least for the sake of 1 or 2 or 10 or hundreds of good companies, which I know there are there. But these companies have to come to bat, man. Yeah. They have to come to bat. They have to bring comments. They have to be active in this proceeding. If they are not, I guarantee you the consumer bar will be active. The NCLC will be active. Public knowledge will be active. They will be filling the docket with horror stories. And there are plenty of horror stories of people who have been abused by, frankly, companies that were not doing the right thing. And those are the stories that they're going to hear. So if you're a company that does the right thing, you better tell your story too. Because if this is one-sided, I'm telling you right now, you're going to get shellacked. It is not going to be good. All right, I'm going to leave that. I'm going to pivot off of that. There's lots of other news to cover. We did a huge presentation. It's on our YouTube channel. You can take a look at it. It was an hour long with Isaac over at the Contact Center Compliance, the DNC.com guys. If you want more information about this, watch that website, watch that video. Obviously, check out TCPA World. We've got lots of content on it. All right, we're going to throw it around now because we just can't spend so much of our podcast talking about one topic. We have so much else to cover. It's freaking crazy.